You're watching the station that's working for you. Now, WMAR-2 News at 5.
All right, good evening. Hope you're feeling well. Welcome to WMAR-2 News at 5. I'm Jamie Costello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
I'm Kelly Swoop. All right, this is a big issue. A lot of parents worried about this. Go to school or learn remotely? It is a question that every district in the country is weighing right now. We're going to share the president's hopes on the matter and how one county is planning for the fall.
And a case of animal abuse, splitting a husband and wife in half. We're going to share you what one man allegedly did to a puppy that has his wife filing for divorce.
And listen up, you got to start checking where you park. Baltimore's going to start enforcing parking fines again. We're going to tell you when those meter maids will be back out on the streets.
All right, but first we want to start in Cecil County tonight, where a Cecil County man who allegedly injured a small puppy faces an aggravated animal cruelty charge.
WMAR-2 News' Jeff Hager has details of what happened.
The victim in this case is Nugget, a young terrier mix, and her alleged abuser now risks losing both his marriage and his freedom. In early March, a tenant at the Charlestown Crossing Apartments in Northeast reported seeing a man kick Nugget, this young terrier puppy, like a soccer ball in front of his building, and later drag it back up the steps by its leash. Investigators would later find blood and vomit trails leading to Ashley Andrews' front door.
So I had noticed that she started acting a little funny, and I had actually planned on making a vet appointment for that weekend. I started noticing that she was a little different, not running around acting like a puppy that she was.
Authorities seized the dog and took it to a vet who found Nugget had suffered a punctured lung, broken ribs, and injuries to her nose, ears, and paws. Ashley's husband, 31-year-old Eric Christopher Andrews, admitted to investigators he had occasionally struck the dog in the nose or nudged it back upstairs when it refused to follow him on its own. And he claimed the dog's feet had become bloody walking on the parking lot surrounding the building. But his wife soon became convinced he had taken out his anger on her puppy, and she chose to let Nugget go.
When I had to surrender her, I sat on the sidewalk crying for 45 minutes. I've grown up with animals. I have animals all home. You hear the dog barking in the background, that's my dog. So, dogs are a huge part. I like dogs more than humans most days.
Especially this one. Eric Andrews now faces an aggravated animal cruelty charge that could land him behind bars for up to 3 years if he's convicted. And his wife no longer feels safe being around him.
That's the reason why I filed for divorce. I couldn't be a part of that. I could not live with that.
Was there a concern on your part if he could mistreat an animal that way, that he could mistreat you that way?
Yeah, that's the reason why I packed up my kids, even his kid.
Once investigators confronted Andrews with the extent of Nugget's injuries, he changed his story, trying to blame the dog, claiming it had bitten him first and that he lashed back out at it in retaliation. Jeff Hager, WMAR-2 News.
All right, let's check in with meteorologist Stevie Daniels, who is with us in the studio tonight. She's right over there.
Yeah, hi guys.
How are you, Stevie?
Look at this. I'm bringing a lot of sunshine. And along with the heat and even the humidity. So it certainly is feeling pretty uncomfortable out there as you step out the door. We are dealing with a mixture of sunshine and clouds, looking at a stratus cloud off in the distance as we take a look out towards Arundel Mills. But mainly dry across the state of Maryland, but we are dealing with some showers and storms mainly up to our north, just to the north of the Mason-Dixon line over towards Scranton, getting hit hard with some of that heavier rain. But I do think that we're going to be talking about pretty tranquil conditions overnight as high pressure kind of resides around Maryland, but it's going to move offshore. That's going to allow for rain chances to actually increase as we head into Thursday and Friday. Heat index values feeling like the upper 90s to near 100 degrees for some spots, feeling like 104 closer to Westminster. Right now our temperatures are currently standing in the upper 80s to the lower 90s. I'll tell you how long the heat and the humidity will stick around in my full forecast. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Stevie. Well, as the city of Baltimore slowly begins to reopen and more people are starting to get back on the roads, parking regulations also have returned. Mayor Young announced that enforcement of parking meters throughout the city will resume on Monday, July 13th. The mayor also says the Department of Transportation and the PABC decided now was the time to return services like metered parking for local businesses and area residents. After nearly a year on the sidelines, Sergeant Bill Shifflett is back on active duty. Remember back on July 15th of last year, Shifflett was shot at the Man Alive Methadone Clinic in North Baltimore. He was shot in the stomach. He had surgery shortly after, but he had some complications during his recovery and had to have another surgery. In December, Shifflett is a 25-year veteran of the Baltimore Police Department. As daily COVID numbers get higher and higher, state governors are calling on the White House to renew their public health emergency declaration. Governor Hogan leads the National Governors Association, the group pushing for the renewal. The declaration ends on the 25th of this month. It lets states do a lot more in regards to aid, including enhanced medical assistance and COVID testing for those without insurance. The governor's group says without that, their ability to help people will be reduced at a very critical time. We have passed a new mark for COVID cases in the U.S. Now more than 3 million people have either gotten or currently have the virus. The focus now, though, is on schools. President Trump wants them all to reopen in the fall, but many are worried it could be too soon. ABC's Inez Delicatario is in Washington tonight with us for the very latest.
With the nation setting a new record of more than 60,000 COVID-19 infections on Tuesday, fears the nation could be moving backwards.
It's really important to get on top of this now during the summer, before the fall arrives, because the fall is going to be pretty tough. And remember, we're going to have the flu season to contend with.
Cases surging in at least 31 states, almost half slowing their reopening plans, or in some cases, even closing down again. President Trump repeating the false claim.
What we're doing very, very well. Again, mortality rate, the lowest anywhere in the world.
It's a false narrative to take comfort in a lower rate of death.
The administration now pushing for schools to reopen.
It's absolutely essential that we get our kids back into classroom for in-person learning. We can't let our kids fall behind academically.
It's ultimately up to states and local jurisdictions to decide when and how to reopen schools. Today, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announcing,
for the vast majority of kids in the vast majority of schools, you'll be going to school, to the classroom, either 2 days a week or 3 days a week.
But in Florida, where more than 7,000 new COVID-19 cases were reported on Tuesday, the state issuing an emergency order requiring all schools to open in August at least 5 days per week for all students. This Florida mom enrolling her kids in online school.
For me, that's not acceptable, because if you are actually saying, okay, let's go back and then let's see who gets COVID. Is it going to be one child? Is it going to be 100 children? Is it going to be thousands of children because all of Florida's opening up?
And President Trump is beginning the formal process to remove the U.S. from the World Health Organization, something his 2020 opponent Joe Biden is vowing to reverse if he's elected in November. Inez Delicatario, ABC News, Washington.
All right, on the home front, listen, if you're going to Broadneck, Windsor Farm, or Marley Middle, you want to know, are you going to school? WMAR-2 News' Don Harrison, a proud product of Severna Park High, is reporting on how Anne Arundel is navigating uncharted waters.
The Anne Arundel County Board of Education met today. The topic on everyone's mind is when and how school is going to start in the fall. The county has come up with 3 options. 1, school starts off with everyone there. 2, all virtual learning, and option 3, a mix of both.
Every student is a virtual student, but some of our students, with the consent of their parents, will go back into buildings 1 day a week, 2 days a week, whatever the number is that we determine, right? To get that additional in-person instruction.
I'm slowly getting by, aren't we all now?
Aiden Marion is getting ready to start his sophomore year at Broadneck High School. He had a major part of his freshman year interrupted because of the coronavirus. Although he wishes everything would just go back to normal, he is leaning towards a combination of in-school and virtual learning.
I think for the safety of everyone else, I think I'd much rather have it be a mix of both. Like, we have inside school for learning and maybe do all the homework and stuff online and maybe certain lessons and whatnot.
Transportation, cleaning, and the cafeteria are all things in consideration as we start back up. The board won't make a decision until the end of this month.
Because we wanted to make sure that we could make the best decision possible with the most up-to-date information that we have.
In Anne Arundel County, Don Harrison, WMAR-2 News.
Well, religious schools and conservative nonprofits will now get more leeway in deciding whether or not to offer contraception. That is based on a ruling from the Supreme Court today. Joe St. George is in Washington and explains the impact of this ruling and what happens next.
Another consequential ruling here at the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington impacting families, particularly women, that may impact access to birth control. You see, when the Affordable Care Act was signed into law 10 years ago, President Obama made clear that women should have access to free birth control on their insurance plans, even if their bosses disagreed with providing it. Churches didn't have to comply, but many religious and conservative nonprofits like the Little Sisters of the Poor, universities, high schools, and hospitals had to offer it. Well, that changes today. Justices ruling in a 7-2 opinion that if an employer has a sincere moral objection, they don't have to offer free contraception through their insurance plans. The federal government estimating anywhere between 70,000 to 126,000 women could now lose contraceptive coverage across the country as a result, meaning women may have to pay $30 to $50 a month out of pocket. Now, today's news wasn't the only victory for conservatives. Justices also ruled that teachers and employees in religious schools can't sue for employment discrimination like employees in other businesses. The High Court also announcing tomorrow will be the last day for opinions, which means we'll find out the president must release his tax returns. At the Supreme Court in Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
All right, as of 5:10 on July 8th, the NFL season is currently a go, but fans may or may not be in the seats.
This is going to be all different. I mean, would you go? Would you go to a Ravens game at M&T Bank Stadium this fall?
I'm not feeling it.
Well, here's the deal right now. The Ravens say they might have to allow less than 14,000 fans in a game on game day. The Ravens are offering season ticket holders several options if they can't get in. You can get your tickets deferred to next year, 2021, or you can ask for a refund. And the team won't sell any more single game tickets either. And if you bought a ticket already, the team will send you a refund. Imagine playing the AFC Championship here in Baltimore. We haven't had it since '71, and 14,000 fans out there. That's the times we live in.
Well, you could argue people are so desperate for sports at this point.
Let's go, right? All right, we have an FBI investigation that is now underway in Indiana after a black man says a group of white people threatened to lynch him.
That's right. We're going to share the terrifying video of what happened and hear from the man about what started this all.
And as controversial monuments are torn down, the question for some is, where should they go? We're going to share most museums and why they don't even want them. You're watching WMAR-2 News, the station that's working for you. All right, we have disturbing video to show you out of Indiana. It appears to show a group of white men pinning a black man against a tree, shouting racial slurs. And now that man says they threatened to lynch him. The FBI has now joined in on the investigation as the community erupts in protest. ABC's Trevor Alt now with the latest.
Demonstrations and investigations are intensifying in Bloomington, Indiana, after viral videos surfaced showing what appears to be a racially motivated attack on the 4th of July.
Let him go, dude.
A group of white men appear to pin 36-year-old Vox Booker, a black man, to a tree, hurling racial slurs, and Booker says they then called for a noose.
So as they're beating me on the ground, one of the individuals yells to a friend to get a noose. Not a rope, but to literally get a noose.
According to Booker, he and a friend were headed to a public beach when those men confronted him, saying he was on private property. His friend Brennan Golightly recorded the altercation on his phone, demanding the men release him.
They had hatred, anger in their eyes. I believe they were, if we had not showed up, I believe they were going to hurt Vox pretty bad.
Booker escaped but suffered a mild concussion and bruises and had patches of hair ripped from his head. He called police to report the attack, but says the Indiana Department of Natural Resources responded and made no arrests, even though he says his life was in danger.
A woman who's in the crowd yells not to kill me. I realize that she's literally talking about me for them not to kill me. And I'm in a state of shock.
The incident has sparked days of protests, one of which turned violent when a driver tried to plow through the crowd. That driver is still on the loose. As demonstrators demand the alleged attackers face charges, investigators say they're still collecting evidence. The county prosecutor telling ABC News, "We anticipate receiving the case soon. We will thoroughly review and determine what charges are appropriate." Federal authorities are investigating the case as a hate crime.
Booker says he tried to talk calmly with these men and was even walking away when they grabbed him. He says he believes he is only still alive because his white friend stepped in and refused to stop recording. Trevor Ault, ABC News, New York.
Well, Richmond has removed another Confederate statue. Today they took down the Confederate soldiers and sailors statue. It is the 6th statue taken down there in just the past week alone. But as more monuments tied to racism are taken down, it's raising some questions as to what should happen to them long term. The head of the Atlanta History Center says museums aren't really necessarily the answer.
Are also intended to command a space and to send a certain message. And some of that is lost, and some of that can overpower everything else that's in the vicinity of them.
Sheffield Hale says that some Confederate statues are just simply too large and heavy for museums. Most also don't want to be the place for cast-offs, but rather things that you need to save to tell a story. He thinks quarantining these monuments for a bit is a good idea, and then having some discussions later about where the appropriate places might be.
We could talk about what they really are and look at perspective, because it's not about the zero-sum gain anymore. Should they stay or should they go? It's about, okay, what do we do with them now and what stories do we tell? And for us, just tell the truth.
Now, we've seen various things happen already to Civil War memorabilia. For example, the old Mississippi flag will go to a history museum. Some monuments were moved to private property or cemeteries. In Dallas last year, a Robert E. Lee statue was even eventually auctioned off for more than $1 million.
And now from WMAR-2 News, Maryland's most accurate forecast.
Good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Stevie Daniels here. I'm bringing you lots of sunshine right now. It is still feeling pretty humid out there and certainly uncomfortable. So if you are heading out and about this evening, if you do have any dinner plans, just make sure to dress cool and also apply that sunblock as well. Stay hydrated. As we take a look out towards the Inner Harbor, you can see a mixture of sunshine and clouds. And actually, as we look off in the distance, there were some very high, thin cirrus clouds aloft in the atmosphere. Right now, our temperatures across the board are in the upper 80s to even the lower 90s. Right now, towards the Inner Harbor, sitting at a temperature of 91 degrees, 89 down towards Annapolis. And as we pan up north a little bit, towards the Hereford zone, hanging out at 88. So all of us are really dealing with temperatures on the warmer side, and it was actually feeling like the triple digits earlier today, especially for the folks over in Westminster. It actually felt like 104 degrees earlier this afternoon. Dew point values right now are still pretty elevated out there, so kind of a similar setup to what we dealt with yesterday, low to mid 70s across Maryland. So that just shows you how much moisture is still kind of hanging out in the atmosphere. As we head into the next couple of days, we are going to keep our dew point values in the low to mid 70s, not just for your Thursday, but also for Friday and for the start of the upcoming weekend. I'm thinking it's still going to be feeling a tad bit uncomfortable for Sunday and as we head into early next week. But looking at our dew point values, they're slowly going to start to drop off a little bit as we head into the middle of next week. So hopefully we'll feel some relief from the very uncomfortable conditions that we've been feeling over the past several days. Right now, we're checking out radar. Scanning the skies, just picking up on some isolated showers, even a few thunderstorms, mainly to the north of the Mason-Dixon line. But all in all, Maryland mainly dry, not just across western Maryland, but even along the Delmarva Peninsula. But as we pan down south a little bit, you'll see this is actually a pretty intense storm system that's just kind of churning through the Carolinas, bringing some heavy rainfall and even some gusty winds. And as that system continues to progress northward, it could actually, as it travels over warm waters, it could start to pick up some tropical characteristics. So we're going to keep track of the exact track of that storm as we head into the next couple of days. Overnight, we're looking mainly dry after sunset. That's when shower and thunderstorm chances really start to drop off and diminish. Into tomorrow afternoon and evening, we are going to welcome a few more clouds, especially around the eastern shore of Maryland. But then, as we head into early Friday, so this is a look right around 6 to 7 o'clock. As I move over a little bit, you'll see we'll start to see some of the impacts from that system, especially for the folks over in Delaware. The bulk of the heavier rainfall, though, really looks to reside mainly to our east. But again, we'll just keep track of that system as it continues to progress. Tonight we fall down to the low to mid 70s across Maryland. Tomorrow topping out well into the lower 90s, keeping conditions on the uncomfortable side with that chance for showers and storms likely for Friday and into the upcoming weekend. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Stevie. Heavy rains in Japan are taking their toll and more deaths are piling up.
Yeah, we're going to share just how unprecedented the damage in parts of that country have been and what Japan is doing to try and help those who need it. You're watching WMAR-2 News at 5. All right, tonight, massive mudslides and flooding in Japan. It has really claimed more lives than ever before. At least 58 people have now died. 12 are still missing after a record rainfall hit the country. More than 3.5 million people are being asked to evacuate. And while the country is in the midst of its rainy season, the amount of rain they have seen right now, it's historic. Tens of thousands of Army troops, police, and other rescue workers have been mobilized to assist all across the country of Japan. All right, maybe the Orioles could try this out this season. In Japan, a Japanese baseball team has a high-tech way to cheer on the team. They're using robot cheerleaders. Look at this. The team, of course, teamed up with robotics company to put 2 types of robots on a special stage inside the stadium. Now, in this video from the team, humanoid pepper robots wearing team jerseys dance to the team's fight song, while walking spot robots dance alongside. They'll have 39 robots dancing at all the home games for the rest of the year. And if they do it here in Baltimore, they ought to dress them up like Wild Bill Hagen. And that's where, give me an O. All right, the pandemic is causing healthcare providers to be reopen enrollment now, and that sign-up period is underway right now. We're going to share you what you need to know if you want to change your health plan or get a new one altogether. You're watching WMAR-2 News at 5.